Everyone wants to leave a legacy of positivity in the world around them. Whether you are a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, a nonprofit executive director, or even a soon-to-be entrepreneur, one fact is always true. The easiest and most effective way to catalyze change in the world around you is through commerce and through business. But how do you do it? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Changemakers Collective, a place where people can come and get educated and encouraged and empowered to be the impact agent in the world around them. Brought to you by Silverback Ventures, Steff Thomas and Scott Woods have over 50 years combined experience helping companies and owners amplify the voice and multiply the impact of purpose-driven businesses. Join us each week as we discuss what it means to live a life of purpose on purpose.
So, welcome back to Silverback Ventures.
We are having way too much fun. You have joined us at the right time.
Yes.
You are in for a treat today because where we're feeling right now, there's no telling where this conversation is going to go.
We are either going to laugh or argue.
Yes,
And why?
probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, I like that. So, Changemaker Collectives, we're going to talk about staff or board.
Yes. Is it a board problem or is it a staff
There
problem?
you go.
We're working through it, folks.
Okay.
We are working through what's going on.
The irony of that is our podcast producer from Nava Studios, Kristen, asked a question and we were like, we've already talked about this. And she was like, really? Because I don't think you have. And then we were like, oh, we're going to argue.
Yes. Yes.
So-
All the notes say we should take one position, and we sat back and said, well, we may have said that last week, but we totally feel different this week.
And I think it's how it's asked, right? So sometimes people will call us and say, you know, we have a board that we want to re-engage, or they'll say, you know, I have 5 staff members, but we need 15. And we say, well, how many board members do you have? And they have 11 people on their board, which is a huge board, I feel like. And
I feel that way too.
we say, well, what do they do? Well, they don't do anything. Well, then you literally don't need more staff people.
So really where we want to get done today is to really talk about how your board and your staff interact or don't, how they complement each other in terms of roles and responsibilities, or they don't.
But you got to have roles and responsibilities before you can gauge that.
110%. Yeah. So as an organization, you need to be thinking about staffing of your organization from a staff perspective.
A lot of times people will talk to us and say, you know, nonprofit, this is a nonprofit clearly, but we're running out of money. We don't have a development team and we don't know what to do. So one of the first things we say is, you know, if you had $0 more, what happens?
Mm-hmm.
And it's my experience. The first thing they say is, well, no one can take on any more hats. Like,
Correct.
we're as thin as we can be.
Yep. We're currently, you know, being as efficient as we possibly can, but we still need more money.
Mm-hmm.
And our response was, you have a advisory board that you put together of people that either have skills or they have influence. We talked about that in a previous podcast where we talked about joining a board and how you should construct your board and how you should strategize around what people you need on your board. That is a very similar conversation to who you need on your staff.
Right.
The difference is when you're working with a board, somewhat helping you fill gaps, typically you have board members are almost always more senior in nature compared to the staff you can afford to hire.
Well, that's why they're on your board.
Right. So you can have a board member, to use your marketing or fundraising analogy, someone who's got years of experience in marketing and fundraising that can guide a staff member, but is not going to be the person you tap to do the staff member work.
Right.
And I think that's where the argument ensues. Like, okay, if I'm a nonprofit, I need a board. By definition, for IRS rules, you have to have a board.
Right.
If you're smart about it, you
can't
listen. Yeah, no, you don't even have to say it. Listen to our other podcast about hiring and putting family members on your board.
There you go.
Bad. We'll link to the other podcast about that because we've covered that.
Right.
Having said that, you really need to understand where you have a board made up of people that are gap fillers.
Right.
Gap fillers on the high level from an advisory standpoint. You also have board members that are there to be magnifiers or amplifiers of your message. And that lends itself to fundraising. If I'm an influencer in their community and I am on your board, I am talking about your nonprofit constantly.
Back to always knowing the vision. The board members need to understand
Yes.
your vision.
Boy, we run into that all the time, don't we?
We really do.
Wow.
I mean, I know that, and again,
Wow.
with the
Yeah, I
with
didn't even
the
think we were going
prepping-
here, but this is a big deal.
Right. Prepping for Everest, right? That's an intensive program that we run with people, but it always
Staffs and boards for that matter.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
But it always starts with the vision. And so we say that in almost every podcast, but then clarity,
Mhm.
then clarity with your board and your staff, and being able to communicate where our pain points are.
Yeah, I think the clarity around the vision of success with your board, and then having moments where you get the board and the staff together so you can see, if I've got, to continue our analogy, I've got somebody who is a senior marketing person, influencer, executive on my board, and I've got a marketing staff person that's struggling, to ensure that the two of them are talking the same language is incredibly important, so that as the senior leader, you're not having to be all things to all people. You're bringing in board members that can have a positive influence on your staff.
Language is important. Scott and I were with a client, and we were talking about development. And Scott and I thought that they were talking about fundraising. They were not talking about fundraising. Development has a plethora.
Yes.
And so
they were talking about computer programming.
Right. Like
should have been talking about fundraising, but they were talking about coding.
So your staff and your board have to use the same language, using the analogy of rowing in the same direction. Everybody has to be pointed in the same direction. And once you clear that up, some of your staffing board stuff kind of falls into place naturally.
It certainly should, right? And I think that's when we have conversations and hear somebody say, my board's not doing anything. And then our next question is, well, what would you like them to do?
Well, okay. Kristen, wonderful Kristen from Nava Studios, once said, well, what's fair to ask them to do? Well, they're on your board. Everything is fair.
It's almost, let me go back and we'll use the analogy of volunteers. Everybody has heard the phrase, the worst thing you can do is give a volunteer nothing to do. Your board members typically are volunteers. If it's a nonprofit, they're 100% volunteers. Right. If it's a for-profit, there's a little flexibility around it, whether they're paid or not paid. But if you have a volunteer and you're not giving them anything to do,
they do nothing.
They're going to not be engaged. They're not going to be amplifying your voice. They're not going to be multiplying your impact. They're not going to be doing what you need them to do. And if you're frustrated as the executive director that your board's not accomplishing what you want them to accomplish, that is not a board problem. That's a you problem.
Right. And Silverback Ventures help boards figure that out, right? So there is a method to getting the board re-engaged. But there's also some freedom in if a particular board member doesn't want to engage.
Yeah, there's ways to put people in the position of their highest and best use.
Right.
We talk about that phrase all the time. You have to get everybody from the executive director down to the bottle washer and everybody in between, including your board, working in their area of highest and best use. If
the right seat of the bus is what people say sometimes.
If you and I, you being a guru when it comes to HR and process improvement, and my background being more on the financial and operational side, if we were on a board and somebody said, hey, Steff, I want to put you on our marketing committee. Yeah, your reaction, for those of you who can't see her on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, there was a crazy eye roll because nobody would put Steff as an HR person in the role of marketing, leading marketing. It's the same across the board.
But we see people on
It
boards
happens
do that
all the time because you as the executive director, for some reason, are thinking the more, the better.
Yeah.
When that's just simply not the case. The better, the better.
Right.
Not the more, the better.
We were talking to someone and they said, well, we have an amount that each board member has to bring each year, whether they bring it themselves or,
You're talking about fundraising.
Yeah, fundraising. And, our bylaws allow us to have 15 people. And so we have 15 people. But okay, stop. What are they doing besides fundraising? Because if that's their only thing, then you can just give them a donor letter and they can be a donor.
It's somewhat frustrating to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know because I know how you think. It's so frustrating with you. We sit in meetings and we hear all the time, we need more board members. We need more board members. We need more members.
And we need more staff. And we need more staff.
What you need is more fundraising.
Right.
And what you're trying to do is give somebody a title to get their money.
Right. Just paint a clear vision and they will give to you.
That makes me feel some kind of way when I say it out loud. You're giving somebody a title just to have them give you money.
But
to your point, you have to, the best way to amplify your voice, multiply your impact, and raise more money is to give people a clear vision of what success looks like, how you're going to change the world so that they buy in and go, I don't care what you give me to do. I am so excited about what you're doing. I want to give and I want to help.
The question is more board or more staff, or board versus staff, or, all of the what do you need more of? Okay. Staff are your people that are executing your vision. Your board are your mouthpieces in their sphere of influence while giving you guidance.
Yep. Their primary function as a board member is to be amplifiers and to be gap fillers at the highest levels. If you're the executive director, you've got all this background in HR process improvement and operational stuff. Marketing and sales is not something you want to do.
I wouldn't do it.
Nor do you feel like you're competent in doing it. So you're going to have someone on your board that can guide you to help you guide the staff that are actually doing the work.
So Scott, that's a really good point, right? So you started out by saying board members are typically seasoned individuals that were successful in their area. Those people, in my experience, typically have a team of people that do the stuff, right?
Yeah,
so here's what I have noticed as a trend when people are a little sideways with their board or their staff. You give them a task, want them to do the task, mad that they didn't do the task, but that's just not where they live. That's not the best use of their time.
Yeah, it's like asking the HR person to do the marketing and then being mad at them that they're not doing it well.
Or asking the HR person to do your recruiting, your onboarding, and really they were in the C-suite. They weren't doing Or having that same person and that person, me, for instance, if I were on your board and you said, hey, we have an HR problem, we have a staffing problem. And I said, well, here's what you really need to do. Yeah, well, I'm not doing that. Well, I'm the subject matter expert.
Yeah,
Why?
That happens all the time.
Right. So I think staff versus board, if you're not utilizing your board in the appropriate way, then it creates a staff and board issue across the board.
Yeah, because if you are trusting your board because they're seasoned executives to be executors and then holding your staff accountable for the execution, you're now creating a situation where the staff's like, you didn't give me the autonomy to do the work, but you're holding me accountable for a volunteer who may or may not be doing it the way you want it to be done. So you as the leader, if you say to us during this intensive or during a conversation at a lunch and learn or whatever, the line at the coffee shop, that your board's not doing what you want them to do, hear me again. That is a you problem, not a board problem. And in order to fix that problem, much like you do with your staff, you have to create clear expectations, a clear vision of what the future looks like. You have to get them excited about what you're doing. And if they're not excited, they should not be on your board.
Scott, but that's where Silverback Ventures would come in, right?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes you're so in the weeds of the, of the
Of the
whatever,
doing. Mhm.
right? That you don't know how to turn the ship around. And
But I'm saying even before that, you're not even driving the boat down the right river.
Okay.
I'm saying if you're saying, because we hear it all the time, I don't know what to do. My board's not, pulling their weight. And we get brought in to train the board the best way to act. And then when we sit down and do our intensive board trainings and we ask them, what is the vision of this organization? Their definition of what success looks like is not yours as the leader. That's a leader problem. That's not a board problem.
Yeah.
The board members are volunteering their time to help you with their expertise. Why? Board members are board members for nonprofits for 3 reasons. They either know you and like you.
Family member.
They're super excited about what you're accomplishing, which is
Right.
where you want them to be.
Right.
Or they're just looking to pad their resume for the next thing.
Right.
The third people you don't want on your board. The first people you want on your board because when you're first getting started, you need some cheerleaders.
I have a question.
Sure.
So we were talking to someone recently. We were at Lunch and Learn, and we were doing a Lunch and Learn, and someone on a board, they were on like 7 boards.
Yeah. That is a, oh man, you're going to get us in trouble now.
Well, don't email
That
us.
is a marketing tool for them.
Okay,
That
that's
is
fair.
not because they are super passionate about, because frankly, I don't know if you can be super, and the boards they were on, let's say it this way, the boards they were on were not in the same problem statement
Right.
as all the other ones.
Right.
So if you said, hey, I'm passionate about
Putting shoes on
yeah,
feet.
putting shoes on feet, or a better analogy is I'm passionate about ending human trafficking.
Good.
And there are 12 organizations in the market that are part of ending this problem. And I'm on the board of all 12 because I want them to collaborate and innovate and transform. 100%
Great
on
use of
team for that.
time. Right.
If I say I'm on 12 boards and one's in human trafficking and one's on footwear and one's in trash collection and one's in whatever.
Foster care.
Yeah. If they're not connected, how are you giving your best and being the best amplifier and gap filler for that organization if your passions are lying in different areas?
When you're interviewing people for your board,
Yeah.
there should
First
be
of
an
all,
interview.
there should be interviewing people for your board.
Right. I mean, you interview your staff members. How long do you expect them to be there? How long?
Yeah.
What
that's a good point,
is
too.
their have you given them an expectation of all the stuff?
Yeah. It goes back to roles and responsibilities,
Right.
right? You've got to be able to define what you expect your board to do versus what you expect your staff to do. And I think that's where, especially in early days, there is a dichotomy that you have to work through. Like, okay, I don't have enough money to pay a full-time staff person to do marketing, to continue the analogy, but I have someone on my board that's got marketing expertise. If you are giving clear direction to your staff member and enabling them to work with the amplification available through your board member, then you can do some stuff.
Right.
But you cannot expect your board member to be an unpaid staff member, and you can't expect your staff member to be an unpaid board member. So there is a collaborative effort where if it's done well through a unified vision of what the success looks like, you can really have some magic happen. One of the World Shoe organization we work with has a nonprofit, a for-profit, and a for-profit in Africa. The board of the World Shoe is made up of people that are amplifiers. You've got people that are CEOs of shoe companies. You've got board members that are CEOs of logistics companies. You've got board members that are CEOs of banking organizations. They're there to be a resource. From our perspective, we can pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, I don't know what this trend should look like in the footwear industry. Right now, we're dealing with how do we get goods and services into the US if we're outsourcing the manufacturing? How do we navigate the tariffs in our pricing? Those are all things that a staff member is not going to know, but you can rely on a board member to use their expertise to help you transition through. So as we're going into thinking about how do we engage the board and how do we separate the board and the staff, clear expectations of who does what. Don't expect your board member to be an unpaid staff member. Let them be the amplifier you want them to be. Then you can really have purposeful conversations. So if you're in a spot where you're not really sure how that all should work, please click on the link in the show notes. Let us help you. Let us help you prepare for that climb to Everest and navigate how your board and how your staff and how everybody involved in your organization, both internally and externally, can work together to create change in the world. So until next time, live a life of purpose every single day and live it on purpose, because you are a change maker. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Changemakers Collective. If you've enjoyed this episode, please help us grow our community by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or rating us on Spotify.
You can also find our podcast on YouTube, so you can come and leave us a comment over there as well. If you want support growing your business and scaling your vision, visit us at silverbackventures.org or connect with us on LinkedIn.
Thanks again, and we'll see you on our next episode.